Good day, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Lysanya's Lounge. Thank you so much for tuning in to this very special edition of Lysanya's Lounge, where I interview today the CEO of Muse Games, Howard Tsao, and the Community Director of Muse Games, Matthew Hartman. Gentlemen, how you doing here today?
Great.
Yeah, doing great.
It's a really exciting time for Guns of Icarus here. First off, congratulations on 4 years of Guns of Icarus. Congratulations on that.
Thanks, man. It's definitely it's one more year than we expected when we started initially. So
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's always a good thing where it's like, hey, you have a 3 year plan, and all of a sudden you got a 5 year plan or a 6 year plan. There you go.
exactly.
Now, recently on some of your live streams, you've been giving away some very special things here. You've given away 200,000 copies of your base game of Guns of Icarus recently. Tell me a little bit about all those giveaways that you've done here.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons we've been doing them, and the first is, as Howard said, we had a 3-year plan, and then we started doing 4 years. I mean, we get to be continuing to work on this that we love doing and continuing to add more support to it. So it's a great way to A, give back and show that support, and B, it's a good way to keep attention on us and keep players interested in being like, oh yeah, Guns of Icarus is still happening. They're still that passionate about the project. They're willing to, give away 200,000 copies. It's a big, exciting thing.
That it is. And you also gave out some costumes as well recently. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. We gave away costumes, basically the extra game copy if you already own Guns of Icarus, and let's say for some reason you have no friends, isn't that exciting? But the in-game costumes as well were, hey, you got to give something away to your friend, which is great. You got to pull in a friend, but now here's something for you. You get to have, free items. You get to have more cosmetics and changing. And if you already have the items, we've changed them out ourselves for you. Just, shoot us a message.
Yeah, I also thought that it was really interesting, right? Because we've done giveaways in the past, and we say, for example, we're doing a giveaway in Mo Games, and we've done like these things before, right? But or bundles and whatnot, but they're really sort of external facing or external focus, where we partner up with some site or some service, and we do these things, right? Sometimes it's for charity, sometimes for like there's site promotion and whatnot, right? But doing it this time is completely player driven. It's really like if we give away a free key, it's really for the players to give to their friends. It's basically the most direct thing that we've done, which is kind of cool. I think people like this will try to do this more often because we're Steam devs and we can request keys. That's actually not terribly big of a deal. So we can do that. And in fact, we have the costume giveaway, and I actually just got keys for the soundtrack, which I actually think that I know that a lot of people don't have. So we'll actually be giving away. I don't know when Matt is like rolling it out exactly, but we'll be sometime this weekend. We will be giving away soundtrack
Ooh,
keys, Steam soundtrack keys, so you can actually unlock and actually get the soundtrack files.
fancy, fancy. Some more giveaways coming up soon. Nice. But speaking of free things coming up, let's actually jump into the heart of the matter. Of course, open beta for Alliance is coming up starting on November the 7th, correct?
It
We
is
are
now
moving
the
it
ninth.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're moving it back a couple of days to the 9th, so we have a few more days to debug. And it's well, anyways, I was gonna say it's also election day because I mean we're probably gonna be out and about for a stretch on the 8th, so we moved back to the 9th.
What better way to take out your aggressions than the day after the election, right? Blow up some airships.
Well, yeah, hey, people either way, right? If
Exactly.
people want to like de-stress from whatever it is by just shooting more stuff, then they're welcome. Everybody's welcome to.
There you go. But let's actually get into some of the big changes coming up in the open beta for
Yeah, definitely.
Alliance. Specifically, let's talk about the new war system and how players can directly affect the wars that happen in Alliance.
Yeah, so there are a couple new things that we've added. So in the last in the last iteration, like in the last open event a couple months ago, people get to pledge their resources from earned from playing matches to a territory on the world map, right, for their factions. So some of the based on a lot of the feedback that people have been giving us about agency and whatnot, we've introduced two additional elements. One is the idea of leadership having a say. So the leaders of the clan for that duration, whatever for whatever period the people, the leaders, they can actually direct the war effort for the entire faction by specifying which territory they would like, the faction resources to go to. And that actually has, so I would say a pretty significant chunk of the resources for the faction will actually be directed there. So faction leadership now actually means quite a bit. Like from a tactical and strategic standpoint, faction leadership will actually be really meaningful instead of just being like cosmetic as it was in the past. There is also another element that we added where if you don't particularly like, for example, where the leadership is directing your effort, your war efforts, or you don't like the default territory, you don't feel like that's the most optimal in terms of like advantage for your faction, you get to unlock. You have more choices that are locked that you can basically unlock. So you can actually unlock more territories for to battle for your faction. So in that sense, we've also added some more individual player agency as well. And in the war structure, basically at the end of a quote unquote season, regular conflict, when the essentially the quote unquote winning side or the more dominant side reaches the resource threshold, they will be able to trigger a war, and thereby like triggering alliances. So the factions actually ally, and they can ally. They can ally by members of the faction voting to see like which. So if I'm a small faction, I can see like, okay, how do I want to ally, and which other faction, like this other faction I can vote to be a part of the alliance with. So in doing so, the war as the basically the metagame transition to a war phase, you're no longer just individual factions. You actually fight as part of the entire faction. So the factions will actually ally and join together, and the resources will be pooled. So that essentially changes the dynamic of what the metagame, how the metagame will be played. And then at the end of the war season, we'll see which alliance comes out victorious. And then as you guys might have seen in the release notes, we have started to write lore based off of that. And so right now the hooks are not totally built yet, but we're working on like basically defining specking out all the different variables for the narrative, so that essentially on an ongoing basis the system will actually be able to generate like these player emergent narrative.
Outstanding. And let's talk about that lore for just a moment, because you mentioned that players themselves can get directly affected in the war itself. The faction leaders can get directly affected in the war. They can actually tell people, hey, this is what I'd like to do. But you have the lore side of it. You have the lasting impact in the game available to players. How do players get involved in that lore?
The lore, we basically write the lore, so it's really performance driven. It's like the victorious faction in the consequential, influential players, the people who like achieve more.
Sounds just like real life right there, right?
Yeah, and more than just like the achievement is the uniqueness. So we track everything from like number of purchases. So if someone is buying plays so much and buys so many conscripts, that's a great data point for us to talk about. Like, this guy bought 1,000 units of conscripts. He, basically led his own army.
Right. Someone could just literally bribe me with real world money.
Oh, let's not go that far though.
Yeah, I'm poor. Okay. Like.
Just like real history. Buy your way into history.
Oh my goodness. Of course, I'm here with Howard Tsao, the Muse Games CEO, as well as the community director for Muse Games, Matthew Hartman. And we're talking about the Guns of Icarus Open Beta Alliance coming up on November the 9th now. And let's also talk about how players can unlock the resources that they need to start these wars, to really get into the heart of the content of Alliance.
Yeah. So part of it is territory, right? Like, so territory have different resources assigned to them, and you can see that on the world map. But also, another part is the event system, which we will again populate and actually create events for people to participate in, and that's another additional way to earn like resources to earn loot. So it's in part specific events that system generated events, and in part just like people's strategic territorial conquest.
So basically, what you're saying is everything in Alliance is completely player driven. Every decision that players make in the game will directly affect their chances to win or lose that war, and some people may have a greater impact on that depending on how much time, effort, and ability to win that they
Yeah, pretty
have.
much.
Outstanding. Well, let's get into some of the. Let's actually get into some of the new alliance modes that are coming out soon. Here, I
Mhm.
believe we have survival, which has been teased in the dev app recently, as well as some other game modes. Talk to me a little bit about those.
Sure. So survival is basically our take on wave-based survival. Within the survival, so like right now there are two versions. One is a long form, 8 waves, and one's a shorter form, 5 waves. But in each of the variation of the mode, essentially you'll be battling against AI in achieving different objectives. So, for example, like one wave will ask you to go destroy a drill while like enemies are flanking you, or they're surrounding you. There may be another objective where it asks you to destroy the boss, and the boss can be the objective. um, or there are like 2 or 3 VIP ships that you have to murder, that you have to assassinate, for example. So there are different objectives, and the objectives constitute the waves. And granted, I mean, some people want a more straight on, just a simpler, just kill a bunch of shit type of survival, and we actually are contemplating that as well.
Hmm. That sounds interesting right there. And then also the one I'm really looking forward to. There's one involving a VIP. I believe that is Infiltration.
Yeah. So infiltration is basically, yeah, like it's it's VIP in a sense that you like, if I'm so there's one ship that's designated as a VIP, and depending on how many ships of a match we play, what's the size of the match, there could be 1, 2, or 3 escort ships. So in that sense, we have to escort and protect that VIP, right? So it's a little bit like convoy protection esque. However, what we're protecting the VIP for is for the VIP to go through the map and quote unquote infiltrate the different enemy outposts. I mean, right now, metaphorically speaking, you are going to different outposts and you're destroying them.
Hmm.
And in the future, we're actually thinking about toying with the idea of like you're actually capturing them instead of destroying them, because sometimes when people test, like, and they feel like, oh, if you can infiltrate and just basically quote unquote capture and you destroy that base, can you also shoot it, right? So but essentially the concept is that the VIP will actually go to these outposts and infiltrate them, and then escape while under enemy fire. So I think it's one of the more um, in a way dynamic and more like risk and reward game mode that we've created, because you're like, you really, the VIP only has one life. If the
Oh
VIP
yeah.
goes down, the match is over. So it's more extreme and more risk and reward than the skirmish VIP, where the VIP can actually die a few times and whatnot. But in Alliance, yeah, I mean, the mission's clear. If the VIP dies, the game, basically the game ends.
Yeah, and I've seen that a few times, and man, it's high pressure when you get into those situations, especially when
Yeah.
when you get flanked, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, there's the boss ship. Everybody GTFO.
Yeah, yeah, and on the HUD, right, the entire team can see the VIP's health at the upper right. So so we were actually just in testing infiltration, and we know that our VIP ship health is like only down to a sliver. So as the escort ship, we were just trying our best to get in harm's way and try to save our VIP. So I mean, it definitely offers a different dynamic of play. And then the third thing that we did is to rebalance and basically re-examine and revamp defense. So in defense is now more of a truer sense of defense. So it's still a little bit StarCraft-esque, right? Like you have to go into the different enemy lanes and to go into enemy territory and destroy the drills. It's kind of like destroying people's mining outposts and whatnot. But instead of making a necessity to bring the cargo back is now optional. So the cargo barges are like the escape pods. They're bonus objectives. If you bring them back, you can heal the base still, and that is obviously to the player team's advantage. But you don't have to do that. So like it frees people up for different kind of play style. They can play really, really aggressively and just go and kill all the drills and try to survive, right? But then obviously the AI director will counter that by, throwing enemies at you and raising tension when you do that. So it becomes much more of a risk and reward game mode, and there's less of a lull or of a downtime where you have to bring the barge back while the enemy's like behind you. And I think it's more of an easily understood game mode now because the barge is also less punishing, right? Because I mean, so for a novice earlier, when they play defense, if they say destroy a drill and they miss the barge and they have like moved on to a different drill, let's say, will move back to the base, and then they realize that, oh shoot, actually I left the barge behind. They have to go all the way back and try to get it. So I think changing that has a lot of ease of use benefits as well. But the kicker is that, well, when the final drill is destroyed, you have to survive for additional 5 minutes. And while like essentially when AI tension's at its highest.
Oh yeah.
So it becomes true, survival and defending your base at that point.
Oh yeah, and I do like some of the changes that y'all did with defense, especially the idea of that little extra couple minutes at the end to be like, oh yeah, by the way, everything like you mentioned, the tension is high, the boss ship's bearing down on you, and it's like just survive and protect your base, high tension, high drama, and high fun for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. In playing that mode so far, after the revamp, it's been pretty intense.
Oh yeah, in fact, a lot of the modes are very intense, especially when Big Mama comes in and says, "Nope, you're grounded, all of you." All of the death lasers.
I mean, yeah, the boss right now is definitely tough. I mean, they're not as tough as they're obviously we actually got a lot of feedback from players and made tweaks based off of that. And I think right now, hopefully, people will find it a little bit more reasonable. But they're still tough, meaning that the design is for people to be able to use multiple ships and coordinate and be able to take it down. With the boss, they're actually surprisingly maneuverable, like more maneuverable than people will expect.
Oh yeah.
So they're not the easiest to flank. And part of the reason why we have to do that is because, well, we have to allow it to protect objectives, to not let people like just bum rush objectives and ignore the boss, right? Because when the boss spawns, usually the tension's pretty high. But if you can skirt that and just bum rush an objective, going like way out in defense with where the boss ship is too slow to be able to adjust and to react, then it will actually make it really anticlimactic. So the boss has to be actually pretty maneuverable. However, I think it does add to I mean, I know that some people like it, some people don't, perhaps, but the idea is definitely for the boss to be maneuverable enough that you can't just flank it that easily, and it will require multiple ships to engage with it and to be able to take it down. And so you should find that say especially in normal difficulty, that when multiple ships are working together, the boss actually isn't too terrible, but it does require a little bit of teamwork, which I think we want to encourage.
Oh yeah, and I've noticed that especially when from the very first iterations of Alliance mode to now, normal mode is a little bit more difficult, requires a little bit more thought, especially around the boss ships. You can't just go in there and be completely like, oh hey, we're just going to rush the objective, we're just going to do this, 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 and we're done. Just check the boxes off the list. You can't do that anymore with the boss ships, especially on maps like Retrieve, on Defense, things like that. You have to have a little bit more sometimes you have to be a little more reactive or have a little bit more planning to the situation. You can't just go out and go boom, 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 done. But yeah, definitely a lot of great changes, and let's actually talk about some of the changes that are coming up for skirmish mode as well, because it's not just all about alliance. Skirmish is seeing some changes coming up specifically for the squid and the mobula. Talk a little bit about those.
I'll let Matt chime in.
Definitely. It's something that we've been testing for like a month and a half, almost 2 months now, going through a bunch of iterations. And it started during a dev fireside chat. So some players were saying, hey, we wanted to see more balance. We feel like you guys aren't listening. How do we break through this? And I said, let's break through it right here. Let's make a Skype group. Everyone, open Skype group, anyone who wants to get in, let's start talking right now. Everything you guys want to say. And the point was twofold. I wanted to show them that, there's conflicting opinions even among the most vocal players. And I wanted to find a better place to, get everyone on the same page. And the biggest thing that came up was like, okay, we need to talk about Modula. The new guns may be more balanced, but they're not as fun. I can't use as many different builds. So from that basis, we looked at, how can we bring the guns back to where they were so the arcs were more in and you could use more gun types without saying, okay, and now the Modula is just a god tier gunship. And from that basis, we yeah, it was. Stats-wise, it was like 20% higher than some other ships. It's like, this is absurd.
Yeah, it was a bit ridiculous, especially you could even see it in the comp scene. Modulas on certain maps were just like, you just set it in there and everybody was running one.
Yeah. So we brought the guns back and we tried a lot of different, like, okay, slower here, turns there, vertical here kind of thing. And, players, they stuck with us through it, which was great because we needed to test it in all these different ways. And we're finalized with, guns are back to where they were, which gives more options. And now, but there's a top speed decrease, the forward acceleration's decreased, and the vertical acceleration's been decreased. So you're a little bit more committed to any engagement that you take, which was the problem with the Modula before, which was, oh no, you've gotten to a bad spot, you kind of back up a little bit, it doesn't matter, and then you just keep going with the most guns possible.
Oh yeah, and actually the Modula went through a few changes before y'all settled on a final change, if I remember correctly, in the player summit.
Yeah, like some things that we tried were like horizontal turn rates and whatnot, and like even more aggressive turn decreases or guns going in like slightly more different directions. But players stuck with us. They said, hey, this is terrible, or here's what we're thinking, or can we try this? And we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I mean, because I think I think what I want to note is that, especially with balance, right, there are a lot of solutions that people propose, and the solutions are based on people's preferences. Well, with preferences, they're by nature subjective, right, and they're by nature based on people's own, like maybe own play style, maybe own favorite ship and whatnot. So when people give feedback about solutions, there are naturally going to be biases, right? I mean, it naturally, people have disparate opinions. Some people might think that, okay, I think that Modula has, say, for example, has a problem. I want to, but I want to see it done this way. Some people are like, oh no, I don't think so. I want to see it done that way, right? And so what we really usually when we look at issues that people raise, right? We, especially with balance, we kind of have to look at what the issue is first, what the problem statement is first, right? And with that, I think sometimes like you look at usage and winning data, especially at a high level, it actually helps us kind of frame the problem statement easier. So I think with Modula, so for example, the win rate is obviously like really high, especially in the usage rate amount. Like, I would say like pretty like high veteran players are definitely like up there. So, it's like that. I mean, at least from a problem statement standpoint, it confirms like what the players wanted to do, and then it's really up to us to try a number of different things over the course of time to try to find a solution that, okay, at least that people think that makes sense. I mean, we don't always get it right, obviously, and when we don't get it right, we usually call idiots, right? And that's fine. But it's kind of an iterative process because, you know, like obviously when people submit their passionate feedback and when they propose solutions.
Oh, there's been a lot of that.
Sure. I mean, they've given a lot of thought and they're really passionate about it, and that's great. But then, you know, just because people, like a lot of people submit, various people submit different feedback about the same issue, and they might offer different solutions. So, you know, it's like obviously we kind of have to examine like the reasoning behind each solution and try to figure out the best we can and try to come up with, you know, what we think is like the best solution. You know, so sometimes like people feel like, oh, you know, how come like my feedback isn't necessarily implemented the way I want it to? Well, I mean, you know, that it's not like, I mean, it's sort of an impossibility in taking player feedback that way, right? And looking at player solutions that way. It's really hard to please everybody all the time. But I think what we do try to do is at the very least identify what the problem is and trying to find our best to you know, solve it. I mean, it's people don't always necessarily agree with everything that we do, but you know, at least I feel like in the case of the Modula, we're definitely tackling the right problem.
Oh yeah, and I think the nerfs to the Modula were absolutely needed. We'll definitely see how the nerfs affect the overall game, especially in pubs and whatnot, here very shortly on November the 9th, and that's when the patch launches, correct? For the tweaks?
Yes.
The night, yeah.
Yeah, so everything launches together.
Yeah, and also like, you know, what's always interesting is that before we release a patch, right, there's also kind of a sampling bias, if you will. So, you know, when we release a patch, people see a negative number, they basically assume a nerf. Sometimes, like, you know, the negative number can be offset by a positive number, but, you know, people perceive nerf, usage rate immediately following the patch will go down.
Oh yeah,
you can see that. Yeah, if you track, you know, in the day, like on a daily basis, or even for over the course of a week to week and a half, the usage rate of that particular thing will always go down. And then, you know, if the balance is actually reasonable, you could see that usage rate gradually, like, you know, kind of creep back towards like what we think will be a normal,
oh yeah,
or equilibrium. So it's actually pretty interesting to kind of monitor that,
especially when somebody comes out there and brings out a Modula and goes, oh yeah, remember that close range y'all said wasn't viable, and they bring out a close range Modula in a high profile situation, and everybody goes, ooh, I want that too.
Yeah, actually, I think what's really interesting is for example, when we first released the Mine Launcher a long time ago now, you know, nobody uses it. Like, no one bothered to use it, right? Oh, yeah. Until I think, you know, either as writers or somebody decided to give it a shot and practice with it, and was able to lob mines directly in front of a ship. Once they can do that, that changed everything.
Oh yeah,
you know? People are like, oh wait, that's actually really effective.
Oh yeah, this story sounds very familiar. I wonder what other weapon has caused that change in the meta. Oh dear.
Going basically unpopular and as a utility weapon, and then becoming a real weapon.
Yes. What weapon could that be? Flares, maybe. Yeah, but I mean, again, every weapon has a use, and every ship has a use, and people just, the meta always changes, like you guys said, and when things change in the meta, when things change in the numbers, the meta obviously is going to change those first few weeks, like you said, and then people are going to figure it out, and then go, oh yeah, by the way, this is still useful. This is actually might be better than what it was before. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, we're not saying that we always get it right. Obviously, a lot of times like we don't. But yeah, it's an iterative process, and you know, its balance is really never ending. But it's fun though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and at the very least, we're trying to keep it interesting.
Well, I would say you've definitely got a lot of people's attention with the Modula changes. And just real quick to touch on the squid changes, you're increasing the armor but decreasing the permahull. And my first thought when I saw that was, ooh, so the squid's actually going to be less tanky because of that, because you can't repair the armor as fast, and it's going to reward much more mobile play as opposed to much more straightforward play.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's sort of like what we would like to get to, right? Is that like, and also I think sometimes like engineering, I mean, just like from a like if I remove myself as a developer for a second, just as a squid engineer, there's like a lot of time I spend camping on the hall, and I'm just there, so
Oh yeah. As somebody who mains a squid or
yeah,
plays as a main
yeah,
engineer, I know exactly where you're going, and maybe not camping is the hole,
yeah. It's
but
like
like I'm in the general vicinity of the hole, so it's like okay, the hole's going down. I know it's down to 50%. It's time to hit that stamina jump right
yeah,
over the
yeah,
hole
yeah.
to airdrop
Especially
right
like
into it.
especially with some of our more esteemed but aggressive squid pilots, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
crewing for them, it's like after like I crew, I crew for them, like, and I'm completely worn out, right? So
Oh yeah.
so I think that's still going to be the case, but then I think hopefully it's people will have to take a little bit there's a little bit more care that will hopefully go into it, because it's obviously if the hull health is lower, obviously the risk of dying is a little bit higher. So yeah, hopefully it will encourage a little bit more of the play on maneuverability, and maybe a little bit less like hull camping for the engineer.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the goal anyway.
Yeah, and I think it will accomplish that goal, and we will definitely see on November the 9th. But let's actually talk about something else in which you've received a lot of feedback on. That's the new UI that will launch on November the 9th. I'm just going to be honest here. There's a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to the feedback. Some people like it, some people don't. Let's talk about that because it's looking rather slick here, the way that you're
Yeah,
presenting it
I
now.
mean, I think so with the feedback, it's not like they're without merit. Absolutely with merit. I mean, we also have some design goals, and it's like obviously like it's not like we say Warren doesn't know what he's doing. He's actually a really experienced UI designer. All right, believe it or not, like, but I think with us is the reason why we wanted to revamp is obviously to incorporate Alliance, right? To incorporate the world map, to incorporate like Alliance into the main menu and so on, and to integrate a lot of the Alliance stuff into the game, and not just like kind of force feed it and just like kind of throw it on top of like whatever we do. But if you look at the UI, we also have to make it controller compatible, right? If you want to
Hmm.
make this viable for PS, the current UI is not. If you like kind of uh, sort of like scheme it, or sort of like design it with controller in mind, it's not really conducive to that, because like one reason is like there's essentially, for instance on the main page, on the header and the footer or whatever, there's like essentially tons of uneven like layout of buttons, right?
Hmm.
And it's from a controller navigation standpoint, that's actually exceedingly difficult to or frustratingly difficult to do.
Oh yeah.
um, so so part of it is really looking at how to streamline the navigation, but also how to like take another look at information hierarchy, right? Because like what I think with the old UI, everything is at the high level. There's like 20, like I don't know, there's 10, 15 different items, all like at first level
Oh yeah.
information hierarchy,
Hmm.
and that's really not good, UI design, right? I mean, we like when we first started, we didn't really know what we're doing, and we kind of build on top of that, and so on. I mean, we
Hmm.
definitely tried and learned a lot over time, but from information hierarchies, it's not really well organized. So what we want to be able to do is to focus on navigation, to get the flow more reasonable, to like have better controller support, compatibility, well, really full controller compatibility,
Oh yeah.
and for people to be able to get into the functionalities of whatever they want to do faster. They want to play, they want to go to Alliance, click on Alliance, and then they're at the play screen. So it's to be able to do that, and make the navigation flow a little bit better. Then obviously a big point of contention right now is with chat. So because of it, we want we want the visual flow to focus on navigation for people to get into to play. So like we adapted like kind of the more traditional like navigational approach, which is sort of like top down and left right driven. So because as a result, we felt like it's a little bit better to position chat on the right, to use sort of more of the chat client model, right? So for example, like if you work on Google, work on like any of the web or like client-based chat clients, that the chat is actually positioned on the right, where the navigation is positioned on the left, and then the work, the really the center of attention, like what occupies the most attention on the page is center, right? So we kind of took that approach. And obviously, like, I think some people definitely didn't like it because they give like chat like maybe a higher weight than I think. I mean, chat is by no means. We're not saying that chat is not like a really significant element, right? But then there's say if you're like if there's like say 1 versus 1A type of like importance given to navigation or the primary functionality on the page versus chat, like chat could be like 1A, right?
Oh yeah.
With that design, with that in mind, we kind of lay it out this way. But I think to some of the players' point is that on higher screen res, the eye travel and the mouse, the cursor travel between if we anchor things on the left versus chat is quite a bit. It is sort of like sort of a flow breaker. So I think what we are also doing now is actually we have a new version that we're testing out nightly where we center some of the things. So like the primary navigation for like a big section is now positioned on at the center, and we also center the lobby as well. And we actually reposition the chat on the left. And part of it is because a lot of it is also legacy, right? Because I mean, people are used to having channel left, and maybe they play Overwatch, they have like channel left, and so there's some legacy involved, But I think as far as chat positioning, to me, there isn't a sacred cow in this case, nor is it a paradigm, because if you take a more navigation centric approach in designing the UI, then you can argue. So for example, like I use basically we use a lot of Google products, right? So like if you look at like GChat and whatnot, positioning on the right is just fine, and it's a productivity service offering, right?
So there's
it's
a little
not
bit of inspiration there then.
I mean, it's definitely something that we reference and we model. We make sure that like we're not like so cavalier that we're doing something that breaks convention, right? So like what we do, we have to like look at different design conventions and make sure that what we're doing is actually is going to be viable. But I think the other issues are like, well, as a result, in like the visual center, like if we anchor a lot of things on the left, like especially in the lobby, especially the lobby screen, the visual center is like sort of void, and it's kind of weird. So we've taken another pass where we started centering everything, and that's fine. I mean, that's actually based on like player feedback from especially yesterday.
Oh yeah.
So which is great, So we actually, Matt and I stayed up pretty late organizing test sessions. And,
I know that. I was there yesterday.
And then Warren actually stayed up quite a bit to make some tweaks, and we're testing. And by the way, like we're all for experimentation, right? And part of I think innovation, or part of improving things, is not be afraid for us to sometimes to slay the sacred cow. So for example, in today's iteration, we're actually proposing a new lobby layout that's actually more center and top down. Instead of everything be like sort of left right or like oriented. I would say it's actually visually pretty effective. We're still like trying to polish it a little bit. It's definitely like when I first look at it, Matt and I first looked at it, it's definitely like, holy whoa, that's really different.
Oh yeah.
But then once we actually try and use it, and trying to track where our eyes are going, we actually found to be pretty effective. So I think with UI is definitely an exercise like this, right? I mean, people have their people are so used to like certain things like convention, especially given that our longtime players, they're playing this game for a long time. They're really familiar with everything, and there's
a lot of change.
Yeah, exactly. Then change, change is there's especially
Uncomfortable,
initially,
very
it's usually,
uncomfortable
yeah,
for a
it's
lot
very
of people.
uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly. So, but we want to get testing done, get a lot of testing, get a lot of feedback this week, and then we want to use the open period as well to get a bunch of feedback. If people don't like it, people like it, great. People don't like it, sure. Want to know why and what's actually what the reasoning is, like what's really bothering people, and we'll try to do our best to address them. So, yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of changes, and I think, once people like sort of, just try it, are willing to try it, there are actually a lot of things that I think are good. I think the information, in my opinion, are organized better. I mean, generally it should be cleaner, and just within the chat design, we did some things different for sure, but I think we also try to optimize some things with display, some things with like staying people in chat and like changing chat channels and whatnot, that we hope will actually make it better, even though it's different from like what
Yeah.
people have been doing things.
I thought that was a nice little tweak in there to add that little extra bit of, hey, you can use mouse to select as opposed to just the keys. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of changes with the UI. Definitely a lot of different things going on, which, as you kind of hinted towards, is leading towards controller compatibility, which
Yep.
means PS4 compatibility. I know you guys have hinted at that
Yep.
before.
Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, we basically have to do this, and we're making a push to get PS4 porting done. Before, for a long time, we have been stuck because our engine, because Unity had a lot of problem in the 4 generation with performance and how they utilize the CPU of the PS4. But I think in the 5 generation, that has been improved significantly. And so now that we're on 5.4, Unity 5.4, we can actually do a lot of these things. So in part, we're revamping the UI anticipation for that, but also we've been actually doing PS4 porting. So we actually got a 2v2 match working across platform.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, there's still like a bunch of stuff that we have to work through, but yeah, well, at least we got that far.
There you go. There's a little bit of hype train for you PS4 fans out there. There's already some working bits in there, so who knows? Stay tuned for more information on that one. Of course, if you want to
we're also under a little bit of pressure to actually deliver.
yeah, so if you want to keep up on updates, folks, you can always check out the Dev Fireside Chats, which are on Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern.
I had dinner with our Sony account manager. They're like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? It's been 3 years. I need it. Like I need something.
Need my fix of airship combat, man. Where's my
I
airship combat?
I know that Unity has been hard to work with, or almost impossible to work with, but you guys got this." I'm like, "Oh, yes,
Yes, we have progress. Experimentation for science. Ah, yes. So good news on that front. But let's actually talk about some of the other changes that have come about in this upcoming patch. New rules for Skyball, including a timer now.
yep, yeah." So Skyball, as in other sporting events, moving like not like Quidditch that could maybe never end. So with any like sporting event, there's it's time driven, right? It's like you have a clock, and so we've actually introduced that. So now a match is 20 minutes. At the end of 20 minutes, if the scores are tied, there will be a sudden death of 5 minutes, and after that, well, people don't score, they could end up with a draw. That's possible.
So now there's a little bit of pressure in PvP now.
Absolutely. So you definitely want to try to win that match and score that goal. We tweaked the spawn, so the spawns are more forward and they're more of a role. The defensive spawn is no longer like just like right next to the goal. So you can't just continue that cycle of like shooting each other and just be in that goal, be kind of caught in that goal. So there's that. I think we're right now, the Skyball changes are more centered around that. And so with this new update, these changes will actually make it in. And then we're also experimenting more with quote unquote passing, and
Yes.
that's going to be for the future.
Oh man, I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, yes, we need more dynamic passing, things like that, harpoons
Yeah,
and
I mean,
whatnot, harpoon usage. That's been one that's been
it's
highly
yeah. I
recommended.
don't know if you guys like have been in a test session where we experimented with that. It's definitely kind of wild, especially with like a lot of people all contesting for the ball at the same time. Like weird stuff happened. But it's definitely something that we're still experimenting. But I mean, with skyball passing, just because you're traversing across a pretty large and expansive territory. You probably won't be able to expect passing to be like, oh yeah, I mean, I can pass from one side of the map to the next, right? But so there's a degree to which passing will happen, and we'll try to experiment and find a way to make that fly, make that cool.
Oh yeah. So hey, if you've got feedback, folks, you know how to do it. Of course, if you want to, there's been a lot of feedback for Skyball. There's been a lot of feedback for Alliance and all sorts of stuff. So you can always provide feedback to Muse at feedback@musegames.com if you have suggestions to either improve upon existing game modes, or if you have suggestions as well to say add new content.
Yeah,
And speaking of new
actually the
content, oh, go ahead.
special abilities kind of went under the radar, huh?
Oh yeah, let's talk about those for just a second. Yeah. Yeah, because the old system used to be the upgrades for the
Yeah.
Alliance mode. Now you've got the special abilities, which I finally got a chance to test yesterday. And I must say, they are looking rather fancy, but on a 200-second timer, kind of like Ultimates and MOBAs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They are there are a couple of reasons why we decided to do this. Well, first of all, like we thought that this is cool. Like when we were testing this, we thought this was like either hilarious or like awesome. Like the I don't know if you guys tried the pilot ram. The pilot ram is pretty sweet.
Oh man, I gotta try that one out.
Oh my god, the pilot ram is pretty crazy.
I know a few pilots who will want that all day.
Yeah, yeah, it's really pretty crazy. I use it a lot. I mean, it's kind of my default pilot skill right now, pilot ability. And there are a number of others, right? And we thought that was actually fun. We thought that was funner, more active, because you have to trigger this, right? I mean, it's really more active and more proactive than just doing some, skill upgrade.
Oh,
which
yeah. And
I
the
think
skill upgrades, they used to, the players didn't even know they existed during the first beta. A lot of people were
yeah,
going in with level 1 skills and not realizing they can upgrade and then getting locked into it. It was a bit of a,
yeah, yeah.
less dynamic system because everybody was like, no, you have to have this build and you can't change it. Now you can with these new ultimates.
Yeah, exactly. And now, like, I think, with Ultimates, it also, yeah, I mean, it's definitely more proactive. I think it should be more dynamic, than just like, I mean, I think the skill like upgrades, like it's kind of like what completion is. I'm a completionist gamer, right? And it's something that I like. It's like, okay, fine. I just, I gain some XP. Oh yeah, like gain some reputation. Okay, here I gain some stats. Stat up. Okay, cool. But it's definitely. I mean, it's definitely not. I feel like it's not as exciting as giving people actual unlocking, like having people unlock actual like abilities that they can use and affect combat. In like drastically affect combat in a pretty situational way. And the other thing with the player ability upgrade, the other problem that we saw was that we didn't think that this was going to be a problem. It ended up being kind of a big problem. Is that it really messed up the captain recommended loadouts because
Oh, yeah.
right, because the captains don't really know how like what level the players do, and then and then so like they'll recommend some like loadout, but whereas like maybe some player has like upgraded this other skill that's like actually more effective, and the captain wouldn't know that. But then even if like we show like we show what every player has, like what their upgrades are, then becomes incumbent on the captain to know all that.
And it would be
To
a bit of
know,
a drain on resources as well.
right? So like the captain have to know. Oh shoot, yeah, actually for this situation, grease level 3 is actually better than burst level 2. Oh yeah, right. So I want to recommend that, and it becomes super like informationally like cumbersome and opaque. So which we didn't actually realize. So for a number of those for a number of reasons, we decided to scrap that and go with this system. And I think it's actually more exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's more newbie friendly as well.
Yeah, yeah, actually, I think so. Because I mean, if we give them a default skill, they can always just press a number and use it.
Yeah, there you go. And let's get into one final topic here before we close out the interview. One topic that has been well, actually, one that's near and dear to my heart, the hashtag Adapt the Maps movement, which
Yeah.
has brought forth new maps to 4v4 play, such as Periton Rumble, and now it is yielding some King of the Hill maps as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's good. I mean, really, the gate was kind of make sure that those maps are that they're performance friendly. I mean, before we actually just didn't really. It's just sort of a little bit of an afterthought, which is kind of stupid on our part, where we were kind of so wrapped up in making new stuff for Alliance, and we just sort of didn't, we weren't as active in keeping up that pace, which is kind of our fault. But yeah, I mean, with that movement, like it's definitely really effective. It feels like, I mean, see, that's the thing that's really effective to me, right? It's like, instead of like parsing through like 6 paragraphs of like feedback, it's like, okay, here's a hashtag adapt Canyon 3v3.
Yeah.
All right, I get it.
There you go, and it has affected some
Excellent.
change, for people who are like, hey, how does Muse listen to the community? I mean, there's all sorts of examples, such as the hashtag Adapt the Maps movement, such as things about
I
the
don't
UI.
know, like I'm not sure what people like what some people think, right? I mean, but I feel like with us, yeah, I mean, if it's like in social media, in email, we pretty much, or on stream or in game, a lot of times, like we pretty much always reply, acknowledge, or read, and I would say most of the time try to find a way to act on. Forums, it is it's a slightly different beast, because sometimes it's kind of hard for us to engage in the middle of the forum posts because yeah, forums, it's very public, and people have like really strong and passionate back and forth.
So, and I know it.
So sometimes like we by us being there and like answering, I don't know if like it actually makes people feel better or not. Sometimes not. So yeah, I mean we've been I think yeah, I mean we've been I would say yeah, like if people want to basically write feedback, I think using email, using the feedback at musegames.com email, and talking to us on stream, like it's just easier for us than going to forums, because forums, like, it's also like there's a lot to track. So
Oh yeah. And before we close this out, any final thoughts that either of you want to add as far as like upcoming projects that you two are working on? Any big things coming down the pipeline here?
beyond the updates,
Yes.
well, with Guns, some of the big things that we're working on are obviously PS. We're working on the Yeshin stuff, which you guys haven't seen yet, that we've been testing. We've been testing this new mode called Ambush. And obviously, you get some narrative dissonance in there because it's all like just gray box and prototype stuff in there. But we've been testing a lot of mechanics, and mechanics is actually sort of interesting. Just by varying enemy spawns and by varying like where players have to defend and whatnot, it's actually been pretty interesting. Like there's almost 2 modes of play, and so like quote unquote ambush, and the title is totally TBD. Is really just there are. It's actually like a little bit StarCraft like, right? Where there are enemy convoys and VIP ships that are traveling from one destination from a starting point to a destination, and you have to intercept and kill it before it reaches destination. If if too many escapes, then you lose. If you can destroy enough of them, you win. So it's kind of like the StarCraft, StarCraft campaign railroad missions.
Oh yeah, so lots of exciting things coming up, lots of exciting new game modes, lots of exciting everything coming up. Want to thank once again Howard and Matthew for joining me here today on Lysanya's Lounge. Thank you so much for stopping by, gentlemen. It was a pleasure interviewing you both.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We got to
Yep.
have a lot of fun talking about all the new stuff coming up.
Outstanding. And if you want to see anything and everything involving Guns of Icarus, you can go to gunsoficarus.com. Lots of exciting discussions going on the forums. You can also, of course, check out the official Muse live stream at twitch.tv/gunsoficarus. They live stream 3 times a week, with 2 times doing the dev games, in which you get to basically fight the devs, as well as their dev fireside chat on Fridays, in which you get to have direct interaction. They take feedback from the community and everything like that. In fact, wrapping up this interview, we're actually heading off to one of the dev games right now. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, to Lysanya's Lounge. Once again, my name is Lysanya, not Lasagna, signing off. Good night, everybody.